And good morning, everyone. We welcome you into the Automotive Intelligence Summit digital event. My name is Bill Zadites, and so glad to have you along with us today as we launch off into our new digital format for the Automotive Intelligence Summit. Again, we appreciate our presenting sponsor, DRN. In a world of storytelling, is your data telling the real story? DRN's Realternative data, vehicle location data paired with powerful exclusive analytics helps build full vehicle stories to help you analyze risk, locate hard to find debtors, and streamline vehicle recoveries. Real data, real analytics, real results, DRN. We also want to say thank you to some of our other sponsors that are on board for the Automotive Intelligence Summit digital event this morning as we bring you content live today, Wednesday, and Friday. You'll also have an opportunity to view some of our recorded workshops, and those will be released over the course of this week and through the month of August as well. So really a unique format designed to give you the content and the information, a deeper dive into some of these subjects than what you might normally have, and to be able to do that at your own pace. We understand that the environment with COVID-19 has forced us into some unique work situations and unique calendar situations. So this digital event is designed to provide you the opportunity and the access to some of this data and analysis to view at your leisure, to view as your calendar allows. So we appreciate your participation and very excited to be bringing you this today. Again, I mentioned DRN, our presenting sponsor. We also want to thank Axiom, IBM, IHS Markit, Wells Fargo, True Payments, eLend Solutions, Driver, the North Carolina Auto Dealers Association, S&A Communications, as well as Cherokee Consulting Group on board as sponsors for this year's Automotive Intelligence Summit digital event. So with the digital event, and certainly I know we've all had probably 1 million Zoom calls and webinars and so forth that we've taken part in, but technology has its way of catching even the best of us. So if you don't have one of your kids around who can help over the next hour or so, we do have a few things that we want to point out to you. You're going to be in attendee mode for this, so that means that you'll be muted. However, if you do have technical difficulties, you can use the raise your hand feature, and someone on our team will be happy to help you and do the best that we can to make sure to solve that technical problem that you're experiencing. We do encourage questions, and you can submit your questions. There's a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen that you can use to ask questions, and we'll do our very best to get as many of those answered for you as possible from that standpoint. We do recommend that you download the app, and in the App Store, you would simply search for Cherokee Media Group. That in the App Store, Cherokee Media Group, download that, fill out the information that you would like for your profile, and that way you can interact with the speakers, you can interact with our sponsors, you can interact and network with other attendees for AIS 2020, our digital event. You'll also have opportunities there in the app to view speaker slides and other things as well. So again, it's the Cherokee Media Group app in the App Store, and we suggest and recommend that you download that. We're going to get started this morning. So excited to have our panel of experts. Man, we were so looking forward to having this in an in-person and live environment, but I can tell you after spending some time with these people over the last few days in preparation for this morning's panel, you're in for a treat. We're really interested to hear what they have to say, and so important to what we've seen in the automotive market, not just on the used car side, but on the new car side as well. So important that we have people in these positions leading the way and doing so in such an awesome way. So we're very happy to have them on board and happy to share their expertise with you this morning as part of AIS 2020, our digital event. I want to bring in our moderator for this morning's panel, Marguerite Watanabe. And Marguerite is joining us from her executive offices. And so Marguerite, good morning. So glad to see you, and thank you for being a part of this morning's session.
Well, thank you, Bill, and I'm honored to be here. I've actually have been a part of the kickoff of the Automotive Intelligence Summit last year, and I was really excited to be in Raleigh, North Carolina in the middle of summer again. Actually, it was going to be in spring. It got postponed, and it's okay. Virtual. We are adjusting to all of the issues that we are facing, and so we thought with this session, given the fact that the industry has changed so much, we are adjusting to it. What I had originally been assigned to talk about was actually a part 4 of a series of sessions that I had done around the fintech. And it was one where we covered the fintech view, the consumer view, the lender view, and then it was going to be the dealer view. So we look forward to getting back to that at some point. For today, though, we are going to have some fun. So over this whole last half a year now about, we have faced many different challenges. And we have, but there have been a lot of good things that have come up as well. And so we thought that we would do a little play, and if you haven't seen the Some Good News put on by John Krasinski, that you really ought to, especially with your family. But we thought we would do some remarkable financing. So with that, let me start. And you have to have seen this session first, right? If you have seen it. But the world does change. So let me introduce our panelists here, because they're going to share about all of the good news that we've had. Let me start off with Bruce Jackson. He is dealer services with JP Morgan Chase, and he handles the retail and the commercial side of the business. We have Tanya Sanders. She's head of the retail credit operations for Wells Fargo. And we have Mark Pregman, who is the head of credit operations for USAA. And we have Bob Beatty, who's the EVP and chief or the customer experience officer for GM Financial. Now, it would be fun, but I won't go into it today about how they all have worked with each other in various places and things like that. But all to know that the industry as a whole, we are, as you know, just one big happy family. So, and I am John Krasinski. Sorry, no, I'm not. But I actually try to do my best to dress up with him, number one. And also, I just wanted to see if this still fit. I guess that was another problem. And I don't have boxer shorts on the bottom, but I do have some pajama pants, but I won't show those to you guys as well. So again, we've had some really challenging times. We wanted to focus on all the good things that the industry has done for the consumers, for the dealers, for each other. There have been a number of meetings that have taken place across the board. The trade associations have come through with AFSA and CBA and NAF. I mean, it's been a really one group effort. And if we truly bring in It Takes a Village, it does take a village for sure on all of that. So the SRF sign, you may be wondering, of course, that's some remarkable financing, but it could have been a whole bunch of other things. I was thinking of like Scientific Research Foundation. We've seen more science, right, than ever. Special Recovery Function. Now that would have been like, wow, what you guys had to all come do, right? Shared Resource Framework. I thought that could have worked, right? Social Responsibility Forum, right? We've had a lot of renewed dialogue with right, social equality, or my favorite, possibly, stress reduction factor. That could have been it. However, we are going to be talking more about some remarkable financing. So with that, let me just kick it off here. And there's really so much to be proud of. And I feel proud to be a part of this industry. So let's start with you, Bruce. Bruce, you know, the dealers have really had to, I mean, it's not just the lenders who have had to come together, but the dealers have had to scramble just as quickly. Things changed by state, by municipality in some cases. I mean, what have you seen out there? What's your view of what happened, especially in the beginning? What was that first round of, how did you come together in March?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's good to see everybody, by the way. Thanks for doing this, getting us all together, see some familiar faces. And you look very sharp, Marguerite. It looks good with everything in the background. And John Krasinski only could wish, right? So you go back to March. It was an interesting time. You know, first and foremost, just like all the rest of you, we got everybody, we took care of our folks. So we got everybody home, one, for their safety. Two, we had to be up and running for the dealers. So, you know, you kind of went into this thing unknowing what we had in front of us. First thing came to mind, we're going to have a liquidity, kind of a cash flow issue with the dealers, et cetera. So what do we need to do? So being at home, Booking and funding is an example. We had to make sure that we were funding our dealers in an expeditious way. They kept the cash flow going because it was very unknown for about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. So we kind of worked through it. We did like everybody else, so the different forbearance programs for the consumer, and then on the commercial side as well, kind of surviving to really fight another day, because again, we didn't know what was in front of us, and we just wanted to make sure that all our portfolios were in really, really good shape. So we got through that process, and then the government started throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at this thing. So both on the consumer side, the PPP program. And so, we wanted to make sure that we access the SBA's program, which was hard and was changing every day. I think that's what we all learned through that 6 to 8 week period. The SBA came back with multiple iterations of that program as we went through, and we did it all from home. So we kind of, we just kind of wanted to make sure the dealers were up and running. The consumer had the protection going forward until we really saw what the government was going to kind of provide for the rest of us.
And that was a great kind of lead in. I mean, it really was almost like scramble, run, it's like a whole bunch of, I'm missing football and sports, so I'm going to use a sports analogy, which is not me, but it's like everyone run on the field. I don't know what your positions are, necessarily. Just run and go in some direction either. Well, that's, thank you very much for sharing that. And Tanya, what did you see on really, you were on the other end of some of that with the operations having to respond to the dealers and not sure how much the volume was coming in and things were changing pretty rapidly on your side as well.
Yes, thanks, Marguerite. And, very similar to what Bruce mentioned, this all came at us fairly quickly. And keep in mind, we are business people, so we are very focused on trying to make sure that we can keep the cash flow going for our dealers, make sure we take care of our consumers. But we also had team members and ourselves, frankly, that were dealing with school closures, lockdowns in our local environments. How do you keep up with the requirements for the staff that was still going into the buildings at that point in time and had to be in the office until you could get them transitioned to work from home? And so what we saw was that immediate redeployment of resources. We learned that we were more nimble than we could have ever imagined, taking team members from different parts of the business and reallocating people to processes and functions that were super critical. So booking and funding, credit decisioning, those being, where I live, really critical in trying to stop doing the work that wasn't as important to get people into those processes. I think what was also interesting is, we are an industry that has been adopting digital for a very long time, probably a lot slower than some other industries, and just the very immediate and quick shift that we saw. Consumers were already there. Consumers were obviously spending a lot more time online, trying to figure out if they were in the middle of a purchase, how to execute more there. Our dealers kicked into gear. And so they also started using more of the tools like e-contracting as a good example. We saw that pick up very quickly as the transition occurred with COVID and the pandemic. And then, for ourselves as lenders, we also had to figure out digital tools relatively quickly and how we adapted to that increased penetration on the digital side. So with econ, we saw a doubling of e-contracting immediately during the pandemic. We also saw that as we had to get information out to our customers, we need to leverage more of those online tools. And so we at Wells Fargo had to really leverage our enterprise assets and the information that could be presented to customers online to help them if they needed help with their payments. So really lots of transition, but what we saw was take care of the people first, as Bruce mentioned, but then also that quick transition to what can we do online? What can we do quickly to digitally support customers and dealers?
Great, and you're so right. We've been talking about a lot of these things for years. Seems like in some cases with e-contracting, certainly the decades, so the fact that we have a pandemic, that it takes a pandemic to get to there is, if anything, we want to have something positive come out of all of this. And I think there would be a lot of great opportunity with that. So thank you. So Mark, You handle both the underwriting and the collections and servicing as well at your side there at USAA. So, anything to add to Tanya, or and also the whole collection side, and lots of changes there on that.
Yeah, and like what Bruce saying, what Tanya said, I think the focus was on our teammates or employees, getting them home, getting them safe. That was that was a Herculean effort, I think, for most banks to get everybody out. It was just a whole new learning environment there together. Within 2 weeks, we had most everybody out, which was good. Then our third parties as well. That was a huge effort. And then I would go on to saying that the focus then for us in default was, I'll focus more on the back end side, was relief to our members. What could we do to provide relief? Because a lot of our unemployment was shooting and skyrocketing. And what I was really impressed was the different industry forums, where the Consumer Bank Associations or other forums like that, where we got together as bankers and we're talking about what are we doing to be consistent and how do we consistently execute. It was a really good open forum. A lot of times we're competitors, right? We're fiercely competitive. I think that everybody came around the member, the customer, and how do we as an industry respond, and using those industry, our forums like CBA to help us with that, dealing with the regulators, and to play point for those to ABA did the same as well. It was just across the board. I think the teamwork between the banks and having those forums is having an open dialogue discussion about what are your best practices, what are you doing, how do we put our best foot forward as an industry. And I think we successfully navigate that. We're doing things that I never thought would happen during the last recession, like we're giving forbearance on repossessions, right? Not repossessing cars. There's just things we didn't do before that we learned, I think, from the past, and came together as really as a community of banks to respond appropriately. And it was large to medium to large and small banks as well. So it was all across the spectrum. That I was very impressed with that. And you could just pick up the phone after the session and just talk to a peer banker and ask them what they were doing. And we were sharing notes just along the way. They're like, how can we help our members, our customers get through this?
Right. And I would probably even add to that, not only do we have all the trade associations and each of our individuals, lenders calling each other, but we also probably even reached out to some of the regulators. Don't always like to bring up that, but I think they kind of came through too. It's all for the sake of the small business, on the dealer side and the consumers. And we can't just operate business as usual in an environment.
No, it was. I mean, it's just unprecedented times. It took us. I mean, it's just like, how far do we go? Because we don't know what's going to happen. It was so uncertain, right? And the unemployment, I think, high water mark was going to be higher than the last Great Recession, right? And so, how do we respond to that? And that was the whole piece to me, making sure that, hey, we understand the situation. I think the stimulus came out. The banks had different forbearance programs that came together on that. And so actually our delinquency, most banks are down year over year. And I never would have thought that, not in a million years. So we'll see, because I know stimulus is burning off here, but I mean, we're for card, auto, home equity down year over year. Most banks are.
Yeah, there are certainly a lot of nevers that we would have thought. Who would have ever thought that you were going to get, people out there saying, oh, you shouldn't maybe try those ride hailing, services out there. You should get your own car. Right? That was, we didn't see that one coming last year either.
Right. I totally agree.
So Bob, so you have a little bit of what Mark has as well with the customer experience and all what you have there, as well as on the remarketing. So whole new world that you're facing on that side just as well.
Yeah, and thinking back to March, I think actually an email I got from USAA was one of my first signs of seeing some really forward-leaning thinking, and when they gave me a discount on my auto insurance because of the pandemic. I think that was in late March, maybe early April.
Yeah.
And a lot of people followed suit. I agree with everything that's been said so far, but also with concerning the regulators, I think we should all, as an industry, be proud that they were basically following our lead. We were implementing policies, customer-friendly policies, and then they came out afterwards and said, this is what you have to do. But we were already doing that. So that really speaks to a very progressive industry. I think more so than I ever thought. I was really inspired at how much the industry came together. I was texting and on the phone with competitors saying, what are you doing with late fees? What are you doing with credit reporting? What are you doing with repossessions? And We were all basically aligning ourselves with each other to make sure that our collective consumer base was well taken care of. After firstly taking care of our employees, that was said before. And in that, what I saw was internal in GM Financial, I saw flexibility and rapid response that I always suspected was there, but it really came out. So I think, there's no turning back now. Our IT department is capable of some incredible things now. I know that really fast, faster than I ever thought. And that's the new bar for them. And I saw an auto finance industry that was incredibly flexible. Like Tanya said, moving to digital. We've all been going to summits like this for years and talking about how great it would be if we could get more dealers to move to digital, and if we could make a great customer experience out of the car buying process. And now we know you actually can. It's not just hypothetical. I think that it's a shame it took a pandemic, but it is inspiring to see what we are all capable of when we lean forward in the right direction.
And Bob, I'll say that you made a point there about the regulators. They stepped in right with us, and I think the relationship there was really good. I think during the Great Recession, all of us were there, and I won't make comments on our ages here, but it was like a middle school dance. The last recession, where everybody kind of sat against the wall, nobody on the dance floor. And then when this one came in, everybody came to the dance floor. The regulators and the bankers, the trade associations, everybody came to dance. It wasn't like this, okay, who's going to get on there first? And we all came together. So I hear your point about that with the regulators. I totally agree that I think as an industry, we came together. We kind of found our way better this time than I think last time. And the response was very positive.
Yeah, I probably want to just clarify that when Bob says that we came in and talked with competitors about certain issues, that it was all done in an antitrust way. Just want to clarify that, okay?
Yeah.
It was done in a way that was, yes.
We had attorney-client privilege there. It was not collusion.
Everything.
Our regulars were there with us. It was one big dance floor.
All public-facing information.
All public-facing information, absolutely. Well, and that's really a good point though, Bob, because we did, and we have been trying to be as open about and transparent as possible, right, as to what we're doing for the consumers. You don't want to keep it a secret that you're offering them, special programs or extensions or whatever. You want them to know. We want the dealers to be able to support their businesses as well as the consumers as well.
Credit bureaus is a great example. I mean, it is real intuitive to think, well, you don't want anybody's credit to suffer because of a pandemic. And so, having a regulator or a legislator say, make sure that nobody's credit is hurt from this, that's easy enough said. Very, very difficult to implement and coordinate. And if we didn't talk to each other to say, how exactly can we do this to make sure that consumers aren't negatively impacted due to a pandemic? I don't know that we could have implemented the practices that we need to in a timely enough manner.
Absolutely true. I mean, that would have, can you imagine last 10 years, if we had said, hey, credit bureaus, all the reporting agencies, we need to change it now, it would have been tough. I mean, those are big companies that have done things that way, and it's all of the reporting, right, that you guys provide to them. So it was a coordinated effort for sure. Any other areas that we missed that you guys saw that I think
Yeah, the used car market, I'm trying to, we're keeping it back in the beginning in March. And I know it's all good news that we're talking about. But we were speculating on some bad news then. And when we talk more about how things panned out, we'll get back into the real good news. But I think all of us were looking at a used car market just drop off the cliff in the wholesale market, and had a lot of worries. And I'm sure we all had data scientists and analysts modeling things out. So that was a curious time for remarketing, with the auctions closing, dealers closing, not being able to take off-lease vehicles back in. So it created some interesting challenges that led to some good news here in the last month.
Yeah, certainly things have changed quite a bit on that side. Bruce, are you going to add something as well?
Yeah, I think Bob said it well. I mean, we had those kind of unknowns. You went into this thing and dealers kind of had their worst Aprils they've ever really had. You had states shut down, et cetera. And then you just watch this coming out of it, the resiliency of the dealers, the resiliency of the auctions, et cetera, that kind of got our industry kind of flow through this was really impressive to see. And these things never happen like you think they're going to. We all sit around, we spend an enormous amount of time anticipating what our risk is ahead of us and how do we mitigate that risk. No one expected this, and no one, and then we sat there and said, to Bob's point, we've got this off-lease vehicle portfolio, we have repossession portfolio, we have dealers that have inventory. We saw inventory levels really spike. Well, now dealers can't get inventory. So it's been a really wild ride these last couple months.
I got a new one. Surprisingly resilient financing. How's that?
That's nice.
There you go. And I think, Bruce, to your point with the dealer, I mean, the dealers, you look at how they reacted to as well to their customers, right? I mean, I had to take my car in for service. They said, you don't need to come in. We'll pick your car up and we'll clean it and everything else. I mean, for either it was sales or service, the dealers really responded to this new environment, which is kind of like the new normal now. It's like, and you're seeing advertising, right? They're advertising how they're adapting, right? So I think the dealers responded to as well, to the customers.
Great. Well, let me bring in a guest here. So, Jonathan, how's the weather?
Well, hey, Marguerite. I'm here in the forecasting center, and I'm going to look at my real-time dashboard, see how the weather's doing. And it looks pretty good. I would say it was really lovely back in June. And if I had to forecast the weather, I'd probably say today is looking partly cloudy, 30% chance of rain, and that rain is of a high pressure front emanating in Washington, D.C. that's threatening the entire country. But beyond that, look on the flip side, 70% chance of sunshine.
Love it. Well, thanks, Jonathan, for joining us. That was great. So, any other thoughts of you? I hope you got to hear all of the team here talk about how we handled the first, certainly the first set of months. I mean, what were you guys doing there at Cox Automotive? Or what did you see from an economist perspective?
Well, I certainly applaud using the word resilient because that's what the industry did. It's really hard to imagine that we're going to likely see a new vehicle SAR for July of 13.3 million when we were 8.6 back in April. The industry, as we were just discussing, had dealers shut down, auctions shut down, unprecedented things were happening. But really the recovery began in earnest in the first week of April, and we could see, based on places in the country that were able to do things earlier, activities start to pick up. And, when I said the weather was lovely in June, it was absolutely lovely because we think the average dealer in the country actually sold more vehicles this June than June last year. And so, as an economist, it's my job to look at every angle, good or bad. It's why they call us the dismal scientists because we often have very dismal outlooks. And back in March, it was dismal, about as dismal as you can get. And we've really seen how the industry's adopted, digital technology, and that's a real plus. That's a plus for everybody. It's a plus for dealers, lenders. From an efficiency standpoint, it's a total plus for consumers. We collect a lot of surveys from dealers, and we actually had a dealer in our survey back at the end of April saying that digital retailing puts more fun into the delivery. So it's pretty amazing, something that dealers were resistant on average to, they now think of as necessary and fun. So I think there's a lot of things that we can applaud. We're not through this yet. That's a 30% chance of rain. And yes, Washington, D.C. is, where we have the most risk, I would say, in the short term. But all in all, I've been very impressed by what's happened.
Well, Jonathan, you and I live here in the Atlanta area. The clouds are one thing, but we get a lot of thunderstorms. Last night was pretty bad, right? I just don't want to have any of those. I mean, and the rest of the crew here is from Dallas. You guys get it even worse than we do. So you're used to it. You get the tornadoes coming through and even more. So let's, and Jonathan, please stay on with us and contribute to the conversation here. But I'm going to go back to Bruce for a moment and say, okay, Bruce, Jonathan just gave us that weather forecast, and what do we see kind of for these, when we first came up with this session, in fact, it was all about the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, that kind of closed, and there might be a couple paths on the tunnel that we're trying to figure out which way to take. But, what do you see now that we're in this almost phase 2 or next area?
Yeah. So, obviously our perspective is March, where we just all kind of hunkered down and said, how are we going to deal with this? And things are, relatively speaking, 10 times better than expected. So the positivity is just from a lender standpoint. And just, I think Bob said it, you just saw your IT department come through for you, things of that nature. Everything's just kind of, you wake up and things are just different. We're working from home. We're just able to operate this thing different than we were before. But and so when you think about the future and you think about what goes on, my gut tells me it's a normalization, because you still got to get. So if you're at a car dealership right now, your challenge is getting inventory, which is kind of a unique challenge. One could argue that we're about to have a lot of inventory because we're back repossessing cars. People can bring their off-lease vehicles in. Hertz just got released to sell 180,000 cars over the next 7 to 8 months. So, you would think inventory will come back. The factories are cranked back up again, but the consumer's still buying a lot of cars. You drive around your neighborhood, you still see a lot of new plates out there. It's an amazing time. But I think it's normal. I think Jonathan said it. I think we're just kind of back to that retail SAR of, call it 13, 14 million. The fleet's going to be the difference and all, but how we operate and what's unique about this is we're able to sign up dealers to do retail with us. We're able to do takeouts of commercial floor plans, real estate loans. We're able to do environmentals. We're able to do appraisal, everything we can do from home. And you never would have thought that. And so, to me, I think we're kind of embarking on a new and exciting time in what we've been kind of dealing with for the last 30 years of our careers. So it's exciting, and I think it's going to be great. And I think the dealers are just going to kind of evolve to whatever the mechanism in which someone wants, or the conduit in which someone wants to buy a car. They're going to do it. Us as lenders, they want to borrow money from us. We're going to operate under that same conduit to provide that for them. So everything I see kind of going forward, there's really no material dark clouds ahead, because I would say in March, we thought it was a dadgum hurricane, and it just didn't come to fruition. We got through it, and things are so good right now. It comes back a little bit. I'm still going to feel real positive about it.
Great. So I'm going to ask both of you, Bruce and Jonathan, on that. So Jonathan, you track with the dealer sentiment as well, right? So you see that on a quarterly basis. And Bruce, you see it daily because you're always with dealers. I think all of you probably on the phone, except, most of you at least are on the phone, also talk with dealers. What do you think the dealers, would they agree with you? They'd say, yes, Bruce, we're right there with you. We feel like it's great. I mean, you've seen some of their furloughs and some of the other things. So I wonder if morale is just a little different there.
So looking back in March, there was a lot more concern about, can I stay in business? What's really going to happen? But by the end of April, we measure both their current view of the market and their future view, what they expect in the next 90 days. And that turned positive. That was optimistic by franchise dealers at the end of April. So now that we've seen steady recovery happening in every market in the country, I would expect in our latest data that we're collecting in just a couple of weeks that we will see similar optimism going forward. There are some worries, out there. Principally, number one being COVID-19 and actually having a vaccine or some way that the risk is entirely eliminated. because until we get to that point, we won't be able to have some of the service businesses, retail, dining, hire everyone back. And so we're going to be dealing with a higher level of unemployment. So far, it hasn't been an impediment to vehicle sales because we had demand, we had people shifting to wanting a vehicle that didn't before, as you were mentioning earlier, Marguerite. And so we've had some positives really supporting, but the pandemic is what's most important. And there's good news about multiple vaccines potentially being available for wider testing very soon, and then likely to be available in initial doses before we get to the end of the calendar year. So there is hope on that front. And the second is truly with the unemployment situation, we will see more supply because of repossessions coming to the market. That's something that you can't just continue to push off if you're the federal government, because we have an unemployment rate that's north of 11% at this point, which is indeed worse than at any point in the Great Recession. So we really need to see business returning as usual in other parts of the economy for us to totally have, the strong conditions. But the worst of this definitely looks over.
Yeah, and I'll just add kind of to your question on dealers specifically. So things we look at. The 6 or 7 publics have come out and they've talked about their earnings. They've talked about what's gone on. They have said that some did furlough. They regret doing it. Someone who was selling 15, 20 cars a month now has to sell 30 to 40, that one individual. So it's hard to kind of get employees back in to those dealerships. The government, additional $15 an hour, plus, federal plus what state, I think kind of kept people from coming back. So I would tell you dealers are a little bit challenged on that, on the personnel front. They need people, they need them bad. And again, I think that'll normalize. But another indicator of what's going on, you still see the buy-sell market very robust. A lot of it's public knowledge about some very large transactions that were kind of, let's say, December, January were mentioned. We as lenders were all kind of lined up to be a part of that. That kind of went away in March, April. It's back. Lenders are lined up again. So what was different in 2008, there was no, we were all, just the industry as a whole, the economy, everybody was hanging on to their capital. And so it was hard to do buy sells. It was hard to kind of do things of that nature. So that has not happened yet. So I don't think it's going to. So, very positive on that front. That would be an indicator. If I felt like the publics were coming out and saying, hey, we're missing, we're losing $2 a share or whatever it is, none of them are saying that. You look at all the earnings that are public, it's good. You see these big buy-sell acquisitions still going forward, and all of those require banks to kind of be behind it. So that tells you banks are still have their toe in the water.
Again, some remarkable financing for sure. Tanya, so tell me what's happening on your side now. So again, we kind of made it through that first phase, and now we're heading into this next. We don't know how long it'll be, but it'll, what does it mean for you and your team?
Yeah, so I think on the, as far as uncertainty, it's clear, right? We are optimistic. However, we don't know what the future holds for us. So we will continue to focus in on how do we manage risk through that uncertainty, and that's very top of mind for us. I think from a dealer perspective, just picking up on the comments from Jonathan and Bruce, our dealers are still continuing to refine this new model that they've now found themselves in, right? And what does a digital end-to-end experience really look like, and how do you optimize that? And in some cases, these models came together fairly quickly, but contactless remote deliveries is an area that we'll continue to focus on in support of our dealers and the customers' expectations. We implemented remote e-sign just over the last couple months as a result of this transition in this new environment. We're continuing to look at what are the other tools that we can employ to speed up the process, partnering with our dealers to understand what that experience needs to look like. And then I think, how we support our dealers has fundamentally changed. As Bruce mentioned, we're all now working from home, and that includes the relationship managers who are used to spending time in the stores, with the dealers to really understand what's going on the ground. And so we've transitioned to Zoom meetings and really trying to understand, how often do our dealers want to hear from us? What's our best use of time as we're trying to help them with their business? Continuing to also look at operationally, how do we take advantage of that nimbleness that we just discovered and look at the future relative to redeployment of resources and retraining of resources in what's now a fully remote environment until we know we can return to the office. So we are spending time looking at those priorities around optimizing that digital experience, really trying to understand where do we reprioritize some of the things that we were working on to make sure that we can support this new model that we've all now found ourselves in.
So you mentioned training. So training of your team, I mean, that's got to change quite a bit as well. I mean, you guys can all answer this, but I'm sure that you've had to move that to an online version as well.
That's right, Marguerite. So we've continued to hire. We did have a pause for a little while as we were going through the transition, but we had to put some planning in place to understand how do we look at training when you're bringing on new team members in a fully remote environment or with limited interaction or smaller class sizes where we can bring them into the office. And so we fully redesigned our training for our booking and funding teams where we've actually had to do some hiring. And we're adjusting as we go and learning from that online experience. We're operators, so the metrics will always tell us where we're doing well and where we need to make changes and improvements.
And I've heard, too, everyone can probably respond to this, about the whole Zoom fatigue, right? And, just before we got on the call, the team was talking about how I had heard on the radio last night about the first thing is you're not only always on, got to sit there, does my hair look okay, just because you're looking at yourself as well. So you got that kind of factor of that you've never had to deal with, right? So now you have people who may have not even met each other and they're trying to interact. I see, me, I'm such a shy person though as well. So I think if anything, it gives you a chance and an excuse sometimes to call relatives you haven't spoken to in a while and you feel bad and say, how's everything going? So I've had a good time at least catching up with people on a personal level. On a business level, like you're talking about with the dealers, it's a whole different world because you're trying to get that sliver of time and they're so busy. And so how do you keep it going? Well, thank you. Mark, tell me on your side, again, you have a little bit of the originations, you have the servicing and you have the collection. So what are you seeing now? What's kind of going on with the second round?
I think we're trying to, I think the original strategy stay in the strategy. I don't think we've changed that. How do we accelerate? I think most banks before COVID were preparing for that eventual downturn recession. Us, like everybody else, you say, how do we accelerate that? So I don't know, it was Churchill, whoever said it's like, don't let a good crisis go to waste, right? And so we're getting invested on. I told my leaders in default, hey, we get invested in a recession, not when things are going good. It goes to the front end, right? So it goes to the origination side. So we're using this time to get that invested in digital to make it easier to fulfill, whether it's mobile, online, to make it easy for that member, that customer, they can do payment plans, different things they do where they don't have to talk to somebody, right? And so we're investing in that as well as hiring up. We've got this, and I think Tanya talked about too, we had to really pivot quickly to do it totally virtual, where you're not seeing someone, you're interviewing them online, they never come into your facility. And how do we pivot that training? We got that done really quick, and most banks got there as well on that. And interestingly too, is the employee sentiment surveys we send out, like a lot of teammate surveys go out, engagement is at all-time high. I think the question they're asked, like, hey, I'm excited, this is great, I'm at home, I'm safe, everything else. Then there's this piece around, okay, do I have to come back in when this ends? We're trying to figure that out, right? I think the at workplace will be different for all banks that get back. We used to say certain jobs, never, you can't work. I think there'll be a hybrid. There'll be some you probably come in for weeks, nest as a team, and then go back out so you keep that connection. There'll be some full-time remote. You don't need to come if you're a project manager, that type of thing. Maybe you don't need to come in or analytics, but it's going to be different, right? Even travel on the front end on the workplace, I mean, it's just going to be different. So we're trying to figure out what's that next piece look like for not only the customer, the member, but also for the employee too as well. And I think industry is we're all trying to figure that out together. this week's gonna be a big week. The stimulus, is there gonna be another stimulus package, right? What's that gonna look like? And I think a lot of unemployed consumers out there are making more money now than they were when they were working. There's a big percentage of that. So they're able to make, when that burns off, goes away, what's going to happen? It looks like something's going to get passed. Don't know what that looks like. Unemployment didn't hit us. We thought 25, 27% unemployment. It's not there. We can maybe softly land ourselves in there. We get some type of stimulus going and the things that the banks are doing, you know, as a whole as an industry. So my focus on what's that look like? You know, what do we got to do? So we're continuing with hiring up collectors, continuing like work on our third parties, the digital piece, and then we're investing heavily in analytics, like segmentation, like making sure that we put the skill with the member that needs the help the most, right? And then self-service as well for those. So that's kind of our focus of this pivot. And I think this will make us stronger as an industry. I think it'll make us better as an industry, because like crisis defines you, right? And I think this is a good thing. It's tough, right? But it can also, if you look inside and we'll come out stronger. I think from a risk standpoint, Tanya talked about that, how we manage risk, but also how do we react to and keep and retain our customers, our members, and our employees as well. So I think it's a win if we look at it the right way.
It's like you said, it's almost like we have to take advantage of this opportunity. It really, you don't want to think of it as just purely negative, right? There'll be a lot that comes out of it. That's good. So Bob, same with you. I mean, you have a lot of people under you as well. I mean, it sounds like everyone. In fact, I've co-hosted with a client 4 different events, happy hours, and they were really supposed to be more social. It turned out to be everyone wanted to talk work. We had CEOs, CIOs, CROs, and COOs, and the one topic everyone wanted to talk about were the move back plans. I mean, that dominated the conversation because I think there was so much uncertain, or not so much even uncertainty, it was just multiple options. So Bob, are you seeing some of that? And what are you seeing again with kind of this next round, this next phase?
Yeah, I think it's, when you were hosting those happy hours, that was a little bit earlier on. And I think everybody's knee jerk was getting back to the way it was before. And in the meantime, I think that's generally accepted that that's just not going to happen. Things aren't going to get back to the way they were before. And like most of us do, best practice is to listen to your customer, listen to what the dealers are wanting, listen to what the consumers are wanting. It's listen to your employees now as well, just as vehemently. They're saying work from home works. Even our vernacular, when we were talking about it, it was return to work plans. And then we realized, no, wait, everybody is working. It's return to office. And now we're questioning exactly how rapidly we need to pursue that and how extensively we need to pursue that. So I can say in my organization, I am having an ongoing dialogue with our team members because you can't deliver that remarkable financing if you don't have a remarkable employee experience. And a lot of them are really worried about school closures and how long that's going to go on. And to Jonathan's point, they're waiting on a vaccine and a true all clear sign to come up before they're really ready to be comfortable returning to an office. And we're looking at it as well, saying, okay, is our model applicable even if there is a widespread vaccine? It's a good bell curve. There's some people who are really flourishing in the work from home environment. And I have a hard time justifying saying you need to come back to an office. They demonstrated their flexibility for us in getting set up very quickly with minimal equipment. Like we don't really have them equipped well as a home office. And they're making it work. They're delivering great experiences to our consumers. And I think if they want to stay home and I can get them the right equipment and we need some more software. I think our biggest challenge, and that we're improving on is leading people from home. Our team members went home and said, I got this. Get me a consumer, I'll take care of them. It's leading and continuing to coach and making sure that there's continuous development and investment in that team member is where we kind of push pause, and we have to make progress there. It can't just be a paycheck for our team members. They have to be getting something from working for us and working with us. So I'm excited about that. Again, we've demonstrated how flexible we are. There's no going back now. There's a demand for a certain flexibility and a new environment to do our business, and I think it's exciting across the board.
I'm just curious to ask a question, Margaret, and Bob and Tanya, Bruce. Have you all published a date when employees will come back in? We were September 1, put it out to January 1 because of school and uncertainty there, and you think about dual income households, right, working and that kind of thing. So just to put that away, and also prepare the physical workspace for a different way when people do come back in. So I'm just curious if you all,
we did actually, we had a voluntary return for people who really wanted to come back. But our primary call centers are in Arizona and in Texas. And when things started going the wrong way with COVID there, we said, well, let's go back to the home offices. And we're really taking our cue right now. Most of our team members are in the Tarrant County area, in where our headquarters is in Fort Worth, and schools there aren't opening until September 28th. So we just wanted to make sure that we were reassuring everybody that there won't be any need to consider coming back to the workplace, at least until then. I would suspect even then it will be voluntary for people who might not have a real good home office situation, and if we can help them out there, they can come back. But nothing set in stone. What gets reiterated time and time again is that our team members' health and safety is the very top priority, and it will continue.
Right.
Hey, so I have a surprise guest for you all. So yes, he's going to come on and wanted to say a few words. We're going to wait for this Zoom magic to happen. Let's see. It's quite exciting that we were able to get him. Just wanted to talk about really all the remarkable financing that's happened on this side. So drum roll, it's coming in. But actually, and Bob, while we're waiting for our guest here, that with those CROs, there we go. Wait, we don't have them live? But it's coming on. It'll be on soon. So there he is.
Yes.
There we go.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Pete.
Bruce, what are you laughing about, Bruce?
I can't believe they didn't tell me you were coming on. By the way, your hair looks very nice haircut, my man.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, she swore me to secrecy, Bruce.
She did a good job.
I know. So for those of you online, if you don't know Pete, Pete's with Group 1, and he handles all the manufacturer relationships, the financial services, and the public affairs. And he's probably, have you even slept, Pete, from the beginning of this? I can't imagine you've even had a chance to.
Well, yeah, I tried to sleep, but there's been a lot of waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, as you can only imagine. But it's funny when you asked me to do this, and Bruce can tell you that when it became apparent that we were going to be having some problems in mid-March, first person I called was Bruce. Bruce, do you remember that discussion?
Oh, very well, very well.
What did I remind you?
Yeah, keep the cash flow coming, big boy.
I said, Bruce, we have 180 some odd dealerships in 3 different countries, and this is a very cash intensive business. And I'd like to remind you, Bruce, that fast pay makes for fast friends.
I think that's for all the lenders on the call, right? You're going to remind everybody.
Well, it's really been terrific because this is clearly a stress on everyone's balance sheet, and the way that all the lenders were able to pivot. I mean, you think about from a traditional model of, representatives coming to the dealerships and having our quarterly meetings to everybody working at home. And it's really been very impressive, and we've all, I think, made some mistakes along the way, but all in all, it's really been terrific, the support we've got from our lenders. This past week, I had Zoom calls with 16 of our top lenders, and we just talked about what the landscape looks like going forward. And, as one of the bigger public companies, we're very thankful for the relationships and the support that we got through this unprecedented time.
And it really has. I mean, Group One, you guys, again, how many dealerships do you have?
187 in the US, UK, and Brazil.
Has it been different in the other countries as well? I mean, Latin America has been hit hard,
Well,
certainly.
it's actually been worse, because the UK was closed, where in the US, auto dealerships were considered essential services, and really the only true lockdowns we had were in the New Jersey markets for us. But the UK was literally, closed in March and April. So you could not generate any meaningful gross profit, and similar in Brazil. So it's been an interesting experience trying to navigate. We're in 15 different states, and every state's got different rules and regulations, and different countries have rules and regulations. So it's been a heck of a team effort for Group One, because us and Penske are the only ones that have international operations. So there's a little more to deal with than you would normally expect.
Right. Plus, with that many dealerships, you also have to deal with all the manufacturers and all the variations there. I mean,
well, the manufacturers have been terrific through this. Their business has been turned upside down. Let's face it, they make money selling cars and selling parts, and they were having trouble producing both. So the manufacturers have been terrific to work with through this as well.
They were making masks and ventilators and other things along the way too, which is another one of those amazing things. I didn't know you can even change a plant that quickly, but that was pretty interesting to hear. Right? No, any other thoughts for P from you guys?
I've got one. Hey, yeah, you and your leadership team have been amazing through this. Not surprising. We're very, very thankful to be aligned with you. But is there anything you've done different? Looking back on those late conversations in March, and you had to make some changes there pretty rapidly. Is there anything y'all would have done different?
I think that if there was one thing we may have been a little too conservative. I think that when we had to take a look at our business, we set a hard floor on how many people that we needed to run our business, and I think in some of the dealerships we maybe cut a little too deep. But at the same time, part of leadership is having to make difficult decisions, and we set a floor on personnel, and we had to make the difficult decisions on 401k and all those things that affect people's lives, but we had to do it to protect the company. And but probably just maybe we cut a little too deep, Bruce. And at the end, we brought people back pretty quickly. We've got 70% of our people back now. So and then we did not take the Paycheck Protection money either. So I think that was a good move on our company's part. We have access to capital, not free capital or unforgivable capital or cheap capital, but we had that, so we did not participate in that, and that hurt us a little bit. I think all the big public companies, because the smaller dealers participated and they were out paying our people to come to work for them, but so be it.
Yeah, it's really the industry coming together. So that's been exciting. In fact, if I were to kind of see if I can get my sound effects. I know you're not medical staff, and I couldn't get pictures of all those from the buildings looking down on you, but they were, trust me, they were all there. So I can't thank you enough. It's been great. This is one last thing that we have from the group here. And this is from the person in the window who was looking in at his wife or somebody else coming through. It says here, we will get through this together. Remember how they did that with all the windows. So thank you guys very much. It's been great to be on this panel with you. And thank you. And this team here, you guys know, is a powerful team. So if you have any questions and you didn't get to it, Bill will tell you how you can.
Absolutely. Marguerite, thank you. I want to thank everyone on this panel this morning. Again, man, how we wish we could have had you here with us. That would have been fantastic. But we'll take the next best thing, which is to have this group on. So Marguerite, thank you so much for your work and pulling all of this together. And it really was great. There is one question, and it was touched on just briefly, but I think it would be interesting to go around the horn from kind of a parting thought. But the mention of repos and also the mention of the lease returns, because as we kind of come out of this weekend, some of the dealers are seeing, as we know, Bob mentioned this, and we're all experiencing, wholesale prices are high. Some of that inventory on the pre-owned side is tightening up a bit. What is the latest as it relates to guidance on repossessions and lease returns as they come back in? And we can start with Bob at GM Financial, and if there are other comments, just raise your hand and we'll be sure to get those. And we'll have this be the final. Jonathan, would love to have you after Bob speak to that as well.
Sure. So I'll start with lease returns. So obviously there was quite a bit of a backlog that built up in March and April as dealerships were closed and just not able to take vehicles back, or consumers were just concerned. They didn't want to go out and go to a dealership. And I think a lot of them wanted to make sure that they had access to a vehicle through the process as well. They might have been able to return their car, but weren't ready to get into a new car with the uncertainty, the economic uncertainty that they were seeing in March and April. So we, like most every other lender, we're very flexible in our lease end extensions, making sure that people had that peace of mind. So that created a backlog that is starting to slope down, but now it's being extended a little bit as some of the consumers are waiting for their next vehicle to be manufactured. But I don't expect to see that backlog of off-lease vehicles back to normal for another couple months, though I would say our return volume is getting closer and closer to the pre-COVID return volumes and expectations. Repossessions, of course, we stopped repossessing as we came back into that area. We started off with vehicles that we had charged off previous or during the initial part of the crisis, and I don't believe that we're back at full force yet in if you will of our normal operations and repossessions, but pretty close to that. And speaking with some of the auction folks, and I'm sure Jonathan can give a lot more information than I can on this, is that they are seeing a pretty healthy flow of repossessed vehicles into the marketplace now.
Yeah, indeed, I can add to that we are starting to see that volume pick up. It's still relatively low, and especially in the context of an economy with more than 11% unemployment rate. It's really low, but it's also backed by very low delinquency rates and very low default rates. We are expecting those conditions to deteriorate, especially depending on what happens with the unemployment compensation that Bruce, I think, was talking about earlier. But we're expecting really the largest source of volume late this summer, so in August, September, October mainly, to be coming from the repossessions that have just been slow to process up until this point. Clearly, values are encouraging any vehicle that can be consigned. This is an optimal time to consign. And it really looks like the retail environment is absorbing every unit because we're not seeing a buildup of inventory. Manheim, at one point was up substantially. I think our days supply measure of wholesale inventory was approaching 150 days. We're now back down to normal. And so, and every day we're eating into the inventory because we're selling more than we're having come in. So it's really not something that I think is a threat to the market. If anything, is providing much supply in the short term, and ditto for what becomes of Hertz and the units that they're going to be able to sell. It's not like it's all going to hit the market at the same time. And we think that there are plenty of channels from direct to consumer to upstream alternatives that you're really not going to see tremendous pressure in the wholesale market. Hopefully it'll relieve some of the pressure that's on the demand side right now to keep prices and values from going any higher. I'm sure the lenders don't want me saying that, but we don't want to see continued multiple percentage point increases in values when we're already at a historical high. So I think it's, if anything, going to normalize later this summer.
Jonathan, thank you for that. And what I'd like to do now, Tanya, and then Bruce and Mark, we'll give you guys a couple of minutes here just for some parting thoughts as we step off into, almost August. Unbelievable on the calendar. Here we come. Just some thoughts for the industry as we close. Tanya, and then we'll have Bruce and Mark. You'll have the final word on our session.
The parting thoughts is, and we talked about this, we're in a very resilient industry, whether it's the dealers, the consumers who have continued to buy cars, through these challenging times, the lenders, and we talked about the industry just coming together to support the transition during the crisis. So I'm optimistic. We're seeing that the pandemic has not stopped the interest in buying cars, although it may slow given some of the economic conditions that are occurring. Our cars have become an escape, in a sense, from our bubbles at home where we're quarantining, and we can get out and at least have our bubble be a little bit more mobile. So it's consumer trends like that, and just understanding that the way of life has changed. That makes me optimistic, and seeing how we've all adapted and created these new models to support those changes. I'm optimistic.
As usual, Tanya is articulates her message very well, and I cannot improve on that. I would just kind of remind, as we hear the news out there, there's a lot of industries doing really, really well. I mean, there just is some unique opportunities where there's some high wage jobs that are still there. So we continue to hear about maybe some low wage industries, things of that nature that are under stress, but it's coupled with a lot of places. I think most of us on the call believe that we are going to need to hire people at some point. I think you may be in a wait and see right now, which is normal, but the plan, I believe, will be that the jobs will return and the things are going to be good. So I will echo Tanya and say I am very optimistic as well.
Mark, we'll give you the last word.
Sure. I'd echo the same thing. It's just, I'm optimistic. I think, like I said earlier, don't let a good crisis go to waste. I think this will make us stronger as an industry, more resilient, and prepared for the future. I think we are going to be better prepared for how to deal with things. And it's just the resiliency is what I'm impressed by. And I think the last thing I'll leave you with is that I'm humbled with the leadership we have here on this panel, but also the different roundtables we've come together by just everybody putting their in and just being real and being transparent and coming together as an industry to help our customers, members out, the dealer out. It's been cool to see. I've just been humbled by it.
Great. And Marguerite, we do need to let you have the absolute last word. You pulled all this together and did a fantastic job. So again, Marguerite, we want to thank you. If I had the sound effect for the applause, I would do that. Absolutely.
I do. I think I have
Yeah,
it.
everyone, Marguerite did a great job. Challenging for sure. But thank you, Marguerite. We appreciate all of your contributions to the industry.
Sorry, it goes off. I just have to say you guys have done a remarkable job. Thank you very much for having a little fun with us. So thank you, Bill. Have a great rest of the conference. I'll be there too, but.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Enjoyed having you on board for the Automotive Intelligence Summit, our opening panel for our 2020 digital event. I want to thank Bob, Bruce, Mark, Tanya, Jonathan, Pete, and Marguerite. You guys were great. Hope you have a terrific rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Hopefully in person.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.